this is a gentleman who is very passionate about the field of testing. I have known him for almost like 15 years of my career. I have always seen him, work with the field in emerging technologies, especially. A very versatile professional as well, and a very humble person, in my personal connections. I would like to invite Subbiah Muthiah, from Qualitest Group, to join in the conversation and talk to us about the future of testing. So Subbiah,
Okay, you able to hear
nice
me,
to
see
see you.
me?
Absolutely. And I like
Okay.
the new look, the COVID look of yours, which is interesting.
Uh,
So, or is it the new Qualitest look, Subbiah? Okay.
no, see, when we talk about the technology, people are expecting some salt and pepper white hair. And if you don't come with this glasses and white hair, people think, okay, he's another manager. Maybe does he know technology? So I thought maybe let me show my white hair and say that, boss, I'm already a technology person. I'm thinking too much. So
Absolutely. As they say, the role always is like a character, and we should have a costume and a setup for the character, that we play.
exactly.
So completely with you. That's why I took off my mustache and the beard, because I'm mostly like talking to customers. But certainly,
Okay.
like thanks a lot, Subaya, for joining us. Over to you, and let's continue the conversation. Yes, on your
Thank
your
you.
point of view on the future of testing.
Thank you, Pradeep. So I hope I'm clear. I know you heard me well. So I got a short presentation, very few content in each of these slides. I want to make it a bit more interactive, if possible, over the chat. And I want to give opportunity for the team here to think through as we discuss on the topic. While the topic is, as Pradeep said, it's not being addressed so far in the session, and that is one of the theme of this today's conference. STC 2021's conference is all about the future of testing and automation, and I'm glad that I'm going to cover the directly on the theme, contributing to the theme on future of testing. So I will just move on. The topic is into the future, and that's the topic that I'm going to talk on. And as Pradeep introduced me, I'm Subbiah Muthiah, and I'm called as Subbiah. And I am the Vice President Emerging Technologies, and I work for Qualitest. Okay, so this is the template Pradeep shared. I realized that the people are not using it, but still I thought I will use it to highlight my presence here. Okay, so before I get into the future, okay, let me take you at least 100 years back. Okay, so the reason is the future that we are getting into is such a significant future that it is going to define something radically different. So in order to look into the future, definitely we have to look into the past, and it is not like the past 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, but we have to go at least a century back. Okay, so I know this image will look nostalgic and people may think what's the relevance here, right? So but just to, if you look at the or recollect your industrial revolution related thought process, you will very clearly understand what type of impact industrial revolution brought in the late 1920s and 1930s, right? So it actually transformed the entire way the business was done. The job market was completely changed. People were shouting that all machineries are taking away the jobs of human, and so many complaints and so many advantages were coming up, and it completely changed the way we looked at the industries. And it gave new set of opportunities. It made a lot of people redundant if they're not skilled with the technology and things like that. And the industrial revolution went on for at least 40 years. It dominated the place until the next big revolution came into picture, which is nothing but the computer revolution, which we are all very well aware of. And I think most of us are beneficiaries of this revolution, right? So this computer revolution, just hold on. Okay, so the computer revolution changed everything, changed the perspective in from 1980s, I would say. So again, if you just compare with the industrial revolution, the funda was almost similar, right? So people started to say, computers are taking away my job, everything will be done by computers, what will happen? And then the whole industry got changed. Okay, so technology became the core of any business. Everything was around technology, and if someone who doesn't have knowledge on computers were not hired, so it gave a new set of opportunities. And I know it is still going on, but maybe it is becoming kind of a past, and we are in the kind of an handover to the next revolution. Okay, so from 1980s to 2020 or so, computer revolution changed everything around us, and it benefited a lot of us, right? And what could be the next revolution that I am talking through, right? So maybe I will pause for a minute or two, people to guess for a minute, and then maybe I will just click the button to show what the next revolution I personally think is and would be, right? And which will revolutionize the industry for next 30 to 40 years minimum, right? So that's a kind of revolution we are in the cusp. Okay, so maybe I will pause for a minute for people to think who is listening to it, just to come out of their sleepiness if they are after the lunch. I give them an opportunity to think for a minute on what could be the next big revolution. Okay, so let me disclose that, right? So the next revolution, what I personally think and what I feel will definitely happen is around the data. Okay, and after seeing this terminology, data revolution, most of you may think, yeah, I thought so. Already people are fighting for data. People are giving products free. They want only data because they're making money out of data. So this is already happening, and this is just at the beginning. Okay, so it is at the beginning, and it is going to change completely the way world around us. Okay, so the data revolution is something which is going to here for another 30 to 40 years. Okay, so being said that the next revolution is going to be around data, what technologies that are influencing this data revolution and the business priorities? Okay, so I have actually grouped them into 5 different categories. Okay, so that's why this number 5 is shown here. I will open one by one. The first one, and which is a prominent one, is the Internet of Things, IoT. IoT is a big influencer of the next revolution, and the reason is very simple. During the second revolution, which is the computer revolution, we digitized almost all the paper-related forms, and then we collected data, and then we started to store them. But now that data is not sufficient. Okay, that data is not sufficient to change the way we do business, and it is not sufficient for us to create a revolution which can sustain in the industry for another 30 to 40 years. We need data from the environment around us. So it's not just about the digital data that is available, but we have to get data from the environment around us, and then we have to digitize them. And Internet of Things is going to help us achieve that goal. And already most of you might know, we have more number of machines connected to the internet compared to a number of mobile phones. Okay, so already it has started and it has laid the backbone, and the future is not too far away. It is already happening. Okay, and the second technology aspect, again, which is quite popular in the industry today, and everybody must be knowing it, which is artificial intelligence, AI. It is a broad terminology. There are a lot of different techniques below it, deep learning, machine learning, computer vision, and stuff like that, natural language processing. There are so many other things there. But artificial intelligence is another big technology which is required if we have to change the way we do businesses. Okay, so we have so much data coming from digital sources. Now through Internet of Things, we are getting data from environmental sources, and now using artificial intelligence, we have to make sense out of the data that we have got. Okay, so that's why AI is important. So AI will understand the data better, and then it will try to help us sort out the ingrained insights from the data. Okay, and if we have to, the third one is the cloud. And if we have to really process this data, okay, it is not sufficient for the servers and the computers that we have today, the capacity to process the data at the speed at which we wanted to do this processing. Okay, so we get, like, say, let's take an example of an car. Okay, so autonomous car. you get so much data from it, or an industry 4.0 kind of a scenario where you have smart industries, where you have to take a decision instantaneously, and you have to process so much data before you make a right decision. And that power can be brought only through cloud. So cloud is another big aspect which is going to help, which is going to act as a backbone in order to deliver this data revolution for us. And the fifth one is enterprise modernization. I know it may sound like a misfit to the technology that I have talked about, but this is quite important, because you have technology, and in the previous session, Anurag was saying, like, we need people, process, and technology. It's not sufficient that we just have technology and we just use technology and change things, but we have to have a supporting environment, supporting system, which is capable of adopting this technology and then delivering results to business. Okay, so enterprise modernization, which is mostly around kind of ERP systems and stuff like that, has to be agile, has to be on the cloud and stuff like that. So that's another big area that is transforming, and as an enterprise, our customers are adopting that. And the fifth and the primary one is the customer experience. So none of this is valid if you are not delivering customer experience. So end of the day, whether it is QAI, or whether it is Qualitest, or whether it is Microsoft, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we are all in the business to satisfy our customers, right? And you may have a great technology, you may have a great process to support it, but you have to understand the customer and deliver the best customer experience. So these are the different aspects of technology that is actually influencing the data revolution, which is there, which is going to be here for at least 30 to 40 years. Okay, so in each of this, it has a QA aspect to it. Okay, you must be wondering what I'm talking about in a QA conference, right? So there is a link to that, right? So from a QA perspective, if you really look into it, there are two aspects to this. Okay, so one, what we test is changing. Okay, so obviously what we test is changing, is completely changing. Okay, it's like because the technology is changing, so the application is changing, the application behavior is changing, so what we will test will also change. Okay, so you will see those in the subsequent discussion. And how we test is also changing. Okay, how we test is also changing. Okay, it's not just about the technology helping, or we have to learn how to use the technology to test the application, but we should also understand how to use those technologies to bring in efficiency in the testing processes itself. So how we test is very, very crucial, and some of these technology components are helping us achieve that as well. Okay, let me move on. Let me take case-by-case examples to explain what we test is changing and how we test is changing. Okay, so the first in the case is this meme, right? Most of you would have seen this meme, I assume. Okay, so you can just read through it. It says, when you discuss with a machine learning expert or a machine learning bot, you ask what is 6 plus 10, it will first say 12. Then you say, no, it is not that. Then it will say, is it 15? Then when we say it is very close to that, then it will say, is it 16? Then we say, yes, it is 16. And then if you give something else, it will again has to learn. Okay, so it is a meme which is very popularly shared across the social groups. But as a tester, if you really double click into it and read between the lines, here the requirement is clear. Okay, 6 plus 10, the answer should be 16. But what you see here is the responses are very different. Okay, so every time it is different. First time it is 12, the second time it is 15, and the third time it is 16. So the machine learning models or the applications are learning, and the responses, even the response of 12 is not wrong, because the accuracy of the model is low. So you are getting something closer to that, and you cannot claim that the model is wrong there, right? Because the technology is designed like that. So, so one is definitely that the answer is right all the time. Okay, the accuracy may be lower. Second, the predicted answer or the failure cannot be reproduced. Okay, we cannot reproduce. So we will raise a defect saying 6 plus 10, it gives us 12. But the next time when you run it, it may say 15. And the next time you run it, it may say 16, right? It is learning, okay? So it's not just about finding defects, which we were all very proud of in the past, right? But it is no more, okay? If you start to say, I have found so many defects in this release, what is my defect leakage in production, it is not sufficient, okay? But it is all about making the application work. So we will no more, as a tester, we will no more break the application, but we will make the application work, okay? So we have to identify ways to train the model. We have to work closely with the development teams. Again, in the previous keynote speech, there was a reference of shift left. Now we have to work along with the team, okay? If we have to get into the future, we cannot work in silo, but we have to work along with the development team. We have to work with them to understand the model, and then we have to make the application work. While they develop the application, we have to make the application work by providing sufficient data points for the machines to learn and make it work and deliver the best experience, okay? So let me move on to the second use case here, okay? Again, I have got two memes for you to read. The first one is obvious, like the person is checking what phone to buy, and the system suggests go with an iPhone, okay? And then it says, obviously, you go with an iPhone. The reason is, if you just look into it, the machine is trained to that because everybody are buying iPhone, and it gives a recommendation that you should also buy an iPhone, but it is not the case. You may want to buy an Android or a different phone, but a machine is tuned in such a way that so many people are buying iPhone, and you should buy an iPhone as well, okay? So it is quite obvious that the machine learns from the data that it gets, and it just gives a recommendation based on what it has learned, right? And the second meme, I know you would have probably read by now. It again says how you can fake the model, right? The model is trained, or the application is trained for a particular use case, particular scenario, and it is quite easy for it to fake the model by providing some data points which are not relevant, adversarial data, right? So you can use adversarial data, and then you can even break the model, and you can even make the model go in favor of you, or the application in favor of you, right? So all of these conditions, as a tester, we have to ensure that it is taken care. And in this case, it's not about consistent output, which we always look for, right? So when we run it, we always say the output should be consistent, it has to be reliable and things like that, but it is not sufficient in the future. And the future demands appropriate outputs, which is not biased, okay, which is foolproof, which is not getting prey or falling prey to data which is data points from malicious incidents. So it is necessary for a tester to scale up and then ensure that the model or the application is providing right output, and it is not just consistent output is not sufficient for us, okay? So that's the second point I would like to highlight. And the third, maybe this time I will play a video. I hope the video audio will be clear to you.
What's the buttons?
Oh no, they installed voice recognition technology in this lift. I heard about this.
Voice recognition technology in a lift in Scotland. You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11.
11. Dublin.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Try an English accent, right?
11. 11. You for the same part of England as Dick Van Dyke?
Listen, yours on smart ass.
Please speak slowly and clearly.
Smart ass.
11.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat?
11. 11.
You're just saying it the same way.
I want to keep saying it till I understand Scottish, all right? 11. 11. 11! 11!
I'll just take us anywhere, you cow. Just open the doors.
This is a voice-activated elevator. Please state which floor you would like to go to in a clear have not selected a floor.
We have 11!
If you would like to get out of the elevator without selecting a floor, simply say, open the doors.
Open the doors, please. Please.
Pathetic.
Please remain calm.
What you went up tonight?
Going up.
Okay. I hope you guys managed to hear the audio as well in the video, and you would have enjoyed it, I guess. And if you just look from a tester angle again, right, the conference being and the topic being future of testing, I just wanted to relate this to testing once again. It's not about functionality. Okay, so the functionality is great. You have installed an voice recognition technology in the lift, and it is absolutely great. So you need not go press something, and in COVID, it may be even appreciated better. You need not touch anything, and you can just speak to someone, and then they will operate it for you. But it is not sufficient. You have missed in customer experience. You have not understood the local market. You have not understood negative use cases, right? You have not tested the fringe use cases, and you have not considered the sentiment of the user, right? And you have not looked at the alternate options, right? All these things comes into picture. Okay, so the person is shouting so many times 11, and it says be calm, and you have to do this way, that way, and stuffs like that. So it is not actually understanding the mindset of the person with whom it is interacting, because it is obviously a machine. But there are ways that a testing community can improve the experience. Okay, so there are ways how you can ensure that the application is working for simple small talks. How does it behave for small talks? It can be trained for local accents in this particular case. So negative scenarios, what happens if you cannot just go by the requirements. Okay, you cannot say all the requirements are fulfilled and then complete it, but rather you have to go beyond the requirements and then test for experiences. Okay, you have to test for negative use cases. You have to say what happens if that doesn't work, and we have to help build the application. Okay, and it is not just enough to do functional testing. Okay, so with that I will move on to the next one, how the testing is changing. Okay, so I will take an example from an IoT use case. We saw quite a few from AI side of the story. On the IoT side, we all know we have to work with the environment. Okay, and in one scenario we may have to work at a temperature, say 35 degree, then we have to suddenly test a scenario for 20 degree. Okay, and then you cannot just ask that climate to change, and obviously that's not possible. And maybe you can simulate to some extent, or to large extent you can simulate it, but as long as the data is straightforward and linear, you can do that. But it's not just about the test data alone that we want, but it is mostly on the environmental data that we are looking for. Let's take an example of a machine or a vehicle on the road, and you have to track the engine and the fuel level, the temperature, oil temperature, and things like that. There are relationship between the components and the sensor output and the data. And we need to understand the environment. We need to have better understanding of the data relationship between them. And we have to work on different mechanisms to generate this data. And we have to use extreme virtualization techniques to simulate the conditions of environment so that we can test the applications that we want to. Okay, so this is something which we have to be fully scaled to in order to address the new age requirements that we will be working with. And the second one is on this cloud related stuff. Okay, I don't know whether the numbers are very visible, but the point is why people are moving to cloud is very, very clear. People want to make as many releases as possible. They wanted to increase the release velocity, and they wanted to do, say, 500 releases, 100 releases in some large enterprises, or legacy companies, even they want to do at least one release per day. And if they want to achieve so much, and they cannot definitely compromise on quality, but at the same time, they need the release velocity. Okay. And we cannot be that one person, okay, who is dragging the speed or the velocity in the entire program. Okay. We cannot say, no, I have written a test case, it has failed for object not found kind of a reason, but I don't know, maybe I will go fix it and then I will rerun it. Okay. We cannot just break the chain, and we cannot be that lagger. Okay. So it's not just about automation anymore. We cannot say that I have automated regression suits, I have automated, or I'm in sprint and stuff like that. It is not sufficient, but we have to automate everything that we have in our between us. So we have to automate test data, we have to automate test environment, we have to automate functionality, we have to automate the way we automate also. Okay, so autonomous testing. So there are so many ways we have to evolve our capabilities to automate things around us, and we have to automate anything and everything around us. Okay, so and we definitely, as a QA team, we cannot be a lagger, and we will become redundant if we are not doing that, and the development team will say, we will take care of it, right? So that's the very frequent term that we are hearing nowadays, right? But companies are not ready to compromise on quality, but the speed at which we deliver quality has to be scaled multifold. Okay, and for that we have to automate almost everything that we have in our way. Okay, with that I will make a conclusion and I'll say quality is beyond requirements. We cannot just go by requirements, find defects, and say and happily claim that okay, we have done a great job and be satisfied, and this will become like an old person in the block, and you will be redundant in the community. Okay, so we have to work towards experience, and we have to think experience is quality, and we have to scale beyond the requirements and then make the applications work, and not just look at breaking the applications. Okay, so we have to make the applications work. And the second one, automation first and automation everything is our primary motto. Some of these testing, even to become like to train the model, you cannot manually do all those things. Okay, you have to automate. You have to automate it first. We cannot wait for the application to be ready. We have to automate as early as possible. We have to shift left. If we can do it at component level, if we can do it at contract levels, API level, microservices level, we have to do at every possible level. And it is not just about the functionality, we have to automate everything that is in between us. Okay, so with that, I will maybe stop my presentation and let's get launched into the future. Let us prepare ourselves. Let us become new age quality engineering professionals, focus on making the application work, and explore ways to automate anything and everything around us. Okay, with that, I will pause and then take any questions if you have got any. Back to you.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot. That was crisp, sweet, and nice. Just like a typical dessert that we would have after a long lunch or a dinner. And certainly very good takeaways, Subbiah. In the sense I was making notes as we were speaking. I think the 4 key messages were very nice, which is not breaking but making, not consistent but appropriate, not functionality but experience, and not automation only but automation everything. I think those were the key messages that you have passed on, which are very relevant. But then it starts to pose a lot of questions at a philosophy level itself, and one of the audience members says, how does legacy applications change their form in modern times? Because that's the trick, right? Like if the applications still continue to be the same, we changing testing is not going to solve the problem, right? So how do those applications transform is the question. It's basic, but I think there is a deeper thought behind his question.
Absolutely. See, DevOps or automation is not everything, first of all. Okay, so it's not that you have to release mainframe related changes every now and then, and it is not always necessary that you have to move away from mainframe to something else. Okay, you have to see which applications need agility. Okay, if you are doing a claims processing using a mainframe system, and it is well proven, and it is secure, and it can deliver results, and you can just continue to do that, and as long as it doesn't require a change which will make you non-competitive in the market, right? So you need not change everything. You need not make it agile for everything. First point. Okay, so that should not be the case. That I'm not saying the future is always with that. So even if we take that industrial revolution or computer revolution, it's not going away. Still, we are working with industries. Okay, so still we are working with industries. Still, computers are there. We are getting into data revolution. So the legacy is not going to die. Okay, so legacy will be there, and there will be different techniques. But at the same time, the future will be prominent, and it will be more than like 75%. Today, the statistics says that already 52% of the applications are cloud native in nature. So people are working on microservices based architecture, which is enabling you to do automation, and everything is API enabled. Legacy systems, you interact with the legacy systems through APIs, making it much more easier for you to communicate. Detach yourself from the legacy and then focus on new age applications in cloud native kind of architecture, and then support agility, right? So 52% is already into cloud native related aspects, and then the remaining 60% or 40% of it, 60% of the 40% left out, people have claimed that they wanted to move in the next 2 years. So there is a fast migration, but it doesn't mean that everything will change from legacy to this agile world. But what is required to be agile will become agile very, very fast. Okay, and more things will become agile, and more such technologies will come into picture, and we have to prepare. This will become a prominent chunk of work that we will do in the future. I hope I answered the question.
No, you certainly did, and I was certainly listening to it while trying to fix my camera, because that seemed to have suddenly failed, and I guess I need to get some artificial intelligence implemented so that we can predict a possible defect that would come in. Okay, so anyway, so that's fantastic. Then, there's one last question here, which says, how should testing move towards readiness for future of testing? And that's where, how should organizations prepare for it? So that's the question.
True. See, there are multiple ways to prepare. Okay, again, to take reference from the previous conversation, I think it is people, process, technology was one approach, right? So you build technology, you enable people, and then do it. Okay, so in some cases, there are new age people. Okay, so the fresh graduates from college are more equipped to take some of these newer technologies faster. Okay, so the type of learning that they get is not they need not do some unlearning, and then learning is not required. They are learning it for the first time, and they are learning it the digital concept. So it becomes easier for them to adopt. Okay, so you need not always look at a junior resource as a backfilling option, but you can look at them as the future ready team, and you can enable them with those skill sets. That is one way to look at it. Second, you can leverage some of these technologies, build tools and capabilities, okay, so that you will not require a very highly skilled person to leverage the technology itself. Okay, say for example, in Kubernetes case, okay, Kubernetes is a great concept to manage your Dockers, and it is open source. It has got a lot of features, okay, but what AWS has done or Azure has done, they have built wrappers around it. They have built technology on top of Kubernetes. AKA services are available, which makes it easier for the teams to adopt that technology. Okay,
correct.
Adopt the technology without having to really know the details of the technology. Okay, that is another way to enable the team, enable the organization, how you could build some tools, accelerators, so that you can bring in repeatability in the organization. Because especially in India, it is a scale game, right? So we cannot just live with one person. We need to have scale, and to achieve the scale, one, you can train. Second, you can make it simple so that you by default people start to use the best practices and the new practices without having to really learn about it. So these are the two different ways how at least we are enabling our own organization to address the future.
No, absolutely. No, in fact, in the words of one of my mentors in my previous, interactions, they very lovely put it saying, you have to learn how to work with the average or below the average, and that's when you actually can scale. And otherwise you cannot expect truly intelligent people to sit down and create some very complex solution and expect the world to buy it. Very rarely would you have such a acceptance for such a complex solution. And I think
Absolutely.
given the millennials, I think they have very little patience in terms of even handling a complex application. If it's not intuitive, they're not certainly going to use the application in any manner, right?
Very true. Very true.
So thank you, Subbiah. It was fantastic. It was really nice. We really had the pleasure of listening to you. It was a very nice, as I said, it was very crisply and nicely put. It was kind of a lingering thought, which we had. And certainly now it's going to linger on forever with us. We love to see and hear more of your experiences in the future editions of the STC as well. So look forward to interacting with you on those. Yeah.
Thank you, Pradeep, for the opportunity. It was really a privilege to be part of this great forum, which you have been very successfully running with a lot of thought leadership in this forum. So happy to be part of your organization and STC absolutely. For a long. Thank you, and all the best for the future events.
Finally, we got you on the stage, in the sense we tried like 3-4 years together, and then at the time you had some other engagement or some commitment, so you could not, but finally we could hear you. So we will make it a regular practice, Subbiah. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure.